everyone knows we are being recorded, so it is up to you if you would like to have your camera on or off. I love to see your beautiful faces, but every once in a while, you know, I'll cover my camera too, depending on what I'm doing. So I totally get that too. Welcome everyone. My name is Felicia Perry. I am the Executive Director of the West Broadway Business and Area Coalition. Welcome to our monthly Northside Business Luncheons that we co-host in partnership with N.E.O.N, the Northside Economic Opportunity Network. I'm trying to get better at saying the whole word because everybody doesn't know our acronyms, but for everyone on the line, it is WBC. We just have 3 letters in ours now. If you add those other letters, you're referencing another business association. So just be mindful of that. So the Northside Business Luncheons, we do them in partnership with N.E.O.N. It's a great way to bring together Northside business owners and entrepreneurs, as well as other key stakeholders in what our economic development and vitality looks like in North Minneapolis. So it's a great space for us to connect, network, connect with each other, as well as connect with like folks that we have on the panel today, our elected officials and our public servants, the people who do work that affects our business. Our business is their business in different ways. So it's really great to have the county joining us today to talk about Metro Blue Line extension and give us some updates on what that project is, how it impacts all of us, and things that we can do to, be a part of that work. Everybody on this line, especially Northside business owners, we know that there's a history of things feeling like things happen to us, and we're really in a moment now where we want things to happen for us, with us, by us, and so let's make sure that we engage in that chat if you have questions or comments or thoughts. Anna will also update you later, but we'll gather information and resources and get them out to you all later. Did I miss anything, Anna or Carla?
Oh, just a quick plug. So even though the lunch is virtual, we do still have catered lunches. And so Kiko's Kitchen, which is a Black-owned plant-based caterer, she catered amazing vegetarian or vegan fried rice and then no egg chicken wrap. So those are at N.E.O.N's office and they will be available until 2 o'clock, but she has quite the following. So first come, first serve. So definitely, stop by and, get some of that goodness. And yeah, I think that is the only updates we can just go into. I think first we're going to start with Commissioner Irene Fernando's introduction of the project, and then I will introduce the rest of the presenters. So once again, I'm Anna Schmiel. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for N.E.O.N. So without further ado, Commissioner Fernando, if you are ready, I'm going to have Carla share your presentation here.
Yeah, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Commissioner Irene Fernando, but you can call me Commish. I am teaming up with both Hennepin County staff and Met Council staff because this project is really situated as a partnership. And so they will have more of the project background and some of the details, but I certainly wanted to help welcome the space. First, I want to thank you all for being here and also for the role that I know you've already played with the Blue Line. This has been an ongoing conversation for literally decades. I moved to the North Side in 2006, and one of my first community meetings was a Blue Line meeting. And so I just know that so many people have contributed, have provided feedback. And I thank you for what you've done so far. And I'm hopeful that we can remain in partnership for what is coming up. So I just have a few slides. I got elected in 2018, started January 2019. The Blue Line, yeah, you can go to the Blue Line portion. I'm proud to get to represent North Minneapolis, District 2. There are 7 commissioners, goes from Plymouth, Minnesota, Medicine Lake, Golden Valley. In Minneapolis, it's North, Northeast, North Loop, Bryn Mawr, and then St. Anthony Village. And so I get to live where I go home here. And I'm really excited for what is to come for this light rail project. So I wanted to begin with, what does Blue Line LRT extension mean? Well, we have a light rail, that's the blue line. Its last stop is currently the Target Field. And the idea is to have an extension that extends from the Target Field station all the way to Brooklyn Park. I was not a part of that original process. I know many people here were. So again, I want to acknowledge all that went into that. And wanted to center us on why are we talking about regional transit at all? Of course, jobs, neighbors, friendships, relationships, healthcare, those aren't limited to where the city we live in or the neighborhood that we're staying at. And so regional transit allows us to increase our access. And it also is a driver for job growth and population growth. And so regional transit is why we want to extend what we have so far. And for the blue line, I am committed for this to be a light rail project. This is intended to be a light rail project. And even with what has occurred recently, this is a light rail project. Why light rail? The amount of investment and the type of investment and the long-term nature of investment, the economic investment, but also that of time and resources is incredible when we are talking about light rail. I am for other modes generally. I ride the C line to work when I used to go downtown. I know a lot of us are in the virtual environment. I seek to also have a really robust BRT system. And in order for us to have a really robust regional transit system, we need this blue line light rail project. We need this long-term fixed infrastructure investment to be the next leg of what we are building. Go to the next slide. For the north side, I wanted to be specific as to why I am excited to be in this conversation, and we're truly in the beginning of this next phase of the project. So first and foremost, who are we serving? We have some of the most diverse by race, by economics in this corridor. So when you think of North Minneapolis through the suburbs and the northwest suburbs specifically, these are some of the most diverse economically and diverse racially communities that we have, and are self-reported some of the highest reliant on transit. So we want to make sure to serve folks that are already using the transit system, as well as those who we might invite into the transit system. Second is increasing jobs, access to jobs, education, and healthcare. Again, we are not limited by our boundaries. Additionally, this will bring in a lot of jobs. So if you look at how the county has focused its transit-oriented development dollars, or even seeing for folks that may know people in like the Hopkins downtown area, even before a light rail gets in, seeing the amount of investment and how it can economically transform a space is really, really powerful. And I'm hopeful that we can see that along this corridor, and specifically in North Minneapolis. We've learned a lot since the Blue Line first began its alignment processes. We had not yet built lanes down the middle of roads. We had not yet invested in, think of it kind of like the University of Minnesota campus is the example I like to give. There's this campus feel, there's this placemaking aspect of it, there's investment. And so as I look to some of the past projects, some of those happened in sequence versus at the same time. And that's a key difference and why we're so excited to be here today. We need some of these conversations, a lot of these conversations, to be happening at the same time, not how do we engineer it? Okay, now how do we get folks to say yes? Okay, now how do we think of economic investment? Those need to be really fluid conversations where we're really in dialogue and seeking feedback and making sure that we are getting as much of this right out of the gate, and that we are not displacing what is already here. We're not displacing our own neighbors or our own residents and our own businesses. Go to the next slide. So this is my last slide before it gets to those who know the details of the project. So my commitment is to deliver a light rail project that goes to and not through Northside communities. This project started a long time prior to me entering the county board. And so there's many different elected officials who have had had their position as to how they engaged or didn't engage. My commitment is that the North Side can and should be a place where people go to. We are a destination unto ourselves. I don't believe we've always been treated in that manner. And so how do we build towards that? That means that some of it will be embedded in this actual project, but sometimes it'll be actions that the board is taking adjacent to the project. So for example, there's an item that we are voting on that I believe West Broadway Coalition and N.E.O.N have engaged in. We're calling it the Community Asset Transition Fund. The county is seeking to partner with LISC to identify properties that were impacted by the unrest, so that we can try to maintain those parcels for community ownership. We know that investors somewhere are likely looking at some of these parcels with large eyes, and we want to, the county wants to provide a bit of a stopgap, if you will, to allow a little bit of time so that the community can make sure that it is centered and hopefully owns those parcels. So I say this because in order for us to for me to commit to this first item, it's not just the blue line. We need to be thinking about that holistically. The second, center community in every project and every phase of the project. So right now we're talking more on the design side. There are some draft principles that'll be proposed principles that are going to be discussed later. We're really in the design. What do we think we would want here? I use Hopkins downtown as an example. I use the University of Minnesota campus station planning as an example. What would it look like to have storytelling in our station planning? Northside's history has been, in my opinion, we've had decades of policy that have worked to divide and sometimes decimate some of the local storytelling that exists here. How is that reclaimed, or how is that positioned in a different kind of way? How do we make sure that all people feel safe and welcomed in our stations? It pains me that prior to the pandemic, if you were a young person or not a paying patron, you often weren't allowed to be places. How do we change that entire culture through this project? Not because of the project, but incorporate that in what we're doing. Through the construction, I would love for us to have the most aggressive participation rates as possible. Folks need jobs, and we want to make sure that those jobs are local, and that we are recruiting diverse backgrounds and people from the community, and then of course for the operations. And last but definitely not least, I believe that the county and Met Council and other infrastructural projects likely have earned feedback around gentrification and displacement. That is well-earned feedback. So how are we learning from that feedback and working to correct it where we can? So these are not small topics, and would love to be engaged with this group in a regular manner. I certainly would love to come back. We are not, again, most things are kind of draft or proposed right now, but this is my commitment to you. My contact information is on the right side, as well as my 2 staff members. And with that, I think I will hand it over to staff.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Irene. So really quick here, I'm just going to give a little introduction. That was a great intro to, where the project's at and the county and Metro Transit's commitments, because you're right, it could be a really great, placemaking, community emphasizing project. But, there is a gentrification side of things. So thank you for acknowledging that. So without further ado, before we launch into the next slideshow, I just want to introduce the other 3 presenters. And so when I say your name, if you could just give a little hand wave. So the first is Daniel Solar. He's the Senior Program Administrator at Hennepin County. And then there is Sam O'Connell, who is the Senior Public Relations Manager at Metro Transit. And then last but not least is Joan Van Hala, who is the Community Engagement Specialist at Hennepin County. Okay, so I'm going to have Carla here share the next slideshow, and then I'll let the presenters go. And then if you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to put them in the chat. And then once the presentation is over, I'll be facilitating that question and answer.
Thank you, Anna, and thanks, Commissioner, for those great words of introduction to get us off on our next phase of this exciting Blue Line Extension LRT project. I know I've met many of you, but for those that I haven't, my name is Dan Solar. And I work with Public Works Administration on coordinating and implementing LRT projects within Hennepin County. Prior to that, I spent about 7 years working on the Central Corridor project. So I'm very familiar with University Avenue. I was involved in the design, the planning, and then eventually overseeing the construction of the light rail on University Avenue for Metro Transit. And then I also spent about 4 or 5 years as the project director of this Blue Line Extension project prior to my coming to Hennepin County. So I'm very excited to continue that work and to work with all of you as we attempt to advance this project. Carly, you can go to the next slide. So really, I don't want to spend too much time because we want to spend some time hearing from you as well. But I want to, this is what we're going to talk about today. This is kind of the general, and I'm going to cover kind of the project background and a little bit of the project update. So you can go to the next slide, Carla. So a little bit about the project background and what we've done to date. The Blue Line Extension has really been in the works for many years, and I know a number of you have worked on this project in the past. Prior to 2014, there was a lot of planning around where this alignment should go and what the Blue Line Extension should be. At that time, prior to that, I was not involved. I was working on Central Corridor then. We opened, as many of you know, we opened the Green Line or Central Corridor project in 2014. And at that time, in the prior to 2014 timeframe, a lot of planning and background and corridor work was done to develop what's called a locally preferred alternative. And that alternative and that project was to build the Blue Line Extension from Target Field Station down Highway 55 to the Burlington Northern Railroad tracks right by Theodore Wirth Park, to go up the Burlington Northern tracks through through Golden Valley, Crystal, Robbinsdale, Brooklyn Park, and then go on to West Broadway in Brooklyn Park, past North Hennepin Community College, and up north of 610, where the Target North Campus was. So when I came onto the project in 2015 for Metro Transit, that was the locally preferred alternative. That was the alignment that had gotten chosen, and that's the route that we went down in terms of planning, design, and eventually implementing the project. And we did that for many years, and we advanced the design with great cooperation from the local municipalities, Minneapolis, Golden Valley, Robbinsdale, Crystal, Brooklyn Park. We had a great team attempting to move the project forward. We worked with a lot of area neighborhoods. We worked with the Minneapolis Park Board, and we developed a very good project. But then we hit a roadblock or a track block or a rail block or just simply a brick wall. And that brick wall was that after years of attempting to reach an agreement with Burlington Northern Railroad to utilize a portion of their right-of-way from Highway 55 north into Brooklyn Park, we have not, could not, and have been unable to reach an agreement with them to buy the corridor, co-locate on the corridor, build and work around their property. We've attempted many different things. both the county, some of our legislative help, some of our municipal help, and Met Council trying to move them along. And that's a significant portion of the current alignment. It covers 8 miles of the 13-mile light rail extension. So BNSF has, and we write in here, became an unwilling partner, because in the early stages of picking this alignment and deciding this would be the way to build the Blue Line extension, Burlington Northern was a partner, and we had every belief that it was not if, but when we would be able to reach an agreement with them to build along their right of way. And that hasn't happened. And so therefore, as a means to implement a project in this corridor, because Hennepin County and Met Council fully believe that implementing a light rail project in this corridor is a critical thing, we've decided to make a pivot in this particular project. And so I think you can go to the next slide, Tara. What we've wanted to do is, or what we did was, we issued a joint statement back in early August after an extensive amount of discussion and analysis about if this was the right thing to do. We issued a joint statement in early August that said Met Council and Hennepin County desires to implement an LRT project that does not utilize railroad right-of-way. That's a difficult thing to do. You're talking about taking the project, which included 8 miles of the 13 on railroad right-of-way, and finding another spot for LRT. So while that presents a significant negative feeling among many, because so much work and costs and advancement had gone into the previous project, it also provides an opportunity. So while it provides a negative in some sense, it also provides a positive, in that it provides an opportunity to revisit, improve, look at, and say, what's different? What's different than when this project was chosen, when this alignment was chosen back in 2014? How has the world changed? How has the conception of where LRT can be built and what it can serve changed? And how can we advance and move this project forward? So that's the opportunity in front of us now. And that's really where we're beginning as we get into this fall with this particular project. So as many of you may know, this is a project that does utilize and has attempted to utilize federal funding. And so we've gone to our colleagues at the Federal Transit Administration and said, folks, we're not getting anywhere with the railroad. We still think we have a viable corridor to build LRT in. We want to still do this project. And so we've been hand in hand with them, and they are understanding what we're attempting to do now, which is to re-look at this and to build a project that doesn't use railroad right away, but still implements LRT in the corridor. And that takes us to our next steps. Now, the next steps then are going to be heavily based on public engagement, getting involved with people like your groups to help us, guide us where this should go. But we can't start with just a blank sheet of paper. We do have to start with some basic principles about what we want to do and what we think needs to be accomplished with this particular LRT project. And those principles start on the next slide. So with regard to the project itself, because this was a federal project, it still needs to be LRT. And that's a consistent thing. We need to maintain, and what you see here, and I'll give a little explanation, we need to maintain the purpose and need. And the purpose and need of this project was to extend LRT from downtown Minneapolis, to extend the Blue Line itself, which, as everyone knows, goes from Bloomington, the Mall of America, to downtown Minneapolis, to extend that from downtown Target Field to Brooklyn Park as an LRT line. That needs to stay, and that's still our goal on this. We need to follow some other things that are federally important if we're going to use federal funding. So we need to talk about what projects that, take care of ridership and travel time and provide a positive project rating. Those are parts of what are necessary in order to have a good federal project. So that's one step of this, and that'll be part of what we look at as we look at potential new alignments. Secondly, though, the next slide shows some other things. We know a lot of work has gone in from local municipalities and groups. So we really want to continue to serve as much as possible our existing corridor cities and as many major destinations as possible. So what does that mean? Well, one of the things it means is, and we just use this one as an example, the previous alignment served many destinations, but one that it didn't serve, for example, was North Memorial Hospital. So how can, now looking at this again, potentially put North Memorial Hospital as a major destination into it? But that being said, the termini need to remain the same. We will begin at Target Field Station, and we will go to the Oak Grove Station, which is north of Highway 610, up by the Target Corporation, North Campus, north of 610 in Brooklyn Park. That's the beginning and ending point of this. We want to complement and avoid redundancy with things that have happened. As you know, Penn was a big possibility for an alignment for LRT back in the pre-2014 days, and now has the C line on it, which has been implemented, put in place, and in operation. So that has some transit service on it. That's different. The D line is underway and being worked on. So those kind of things are part of what we'll have to take into consideration. And then minimizing impacts, looking at property acquisition, both residential, commercial, where's the best place to put this from a engineering, community development, service, neighborhood piece. Those are all things that we'll have to look at as we start to talk about an alignment. But one of the things that I like to say is that as I worked on University Avenue and Central Corridor, there was a lot of discussion early on in the planning and then during construction. The Central Corridor is going to be a transit line that runs down University Avenue to get between Minneapolis and St. Paul, or is it going to be a transit line that's built on University Avenue to serve University Avenue and the areas adjacent to it? And I really think that in that project, we did a good job of building something that is not only going between some points, but also serving all the points in between. And I'm happy to share a lot of experiences about both the planning and the construction of light rail on University Avenue as we continue to talk about this. So those are the parts I have. I'm going to be working on this project for a long time. I'm going to be happy to answer any questions that people have. But a big piece of this is the public engagement component, how we want to engage with communities and groups, and that's going to be Sam and N.E.O.N. take that piece.
Great, thank you, Dan. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Sam O'Connell, and I work for Metro Transit Met Council. My role is to ensure that voices are heard and that considerations from communities are being integrated into a lot of what Dan had talked about in terms of the technical work and making sure that we're being responsive and respectful. I come from a history of transit projects, everything from greater Minnesota to high-speed rail in my career, and I can tell you this, no project has ever moved forward unless there's been strong community support. And we have heard that, as Dan talked about, from the Federal Transit Administration and forward, to make Blue Line successful and move forward as we've gotten going through this transition, we need that community support. And it's just not the rubber stamping, it really is the engagement, it really is. If all we do is build a train line that just runs, we've missed the opportunity, because these are 50-year and 100-year investments. And we really need to reflect the communities that we are truly serving. I could say I represent an organization that is still learning how best to do that. And we really are committed to really reflect the values and the desires of the community. So as Dan talked about the alignment principles, we're also going to talk about sort of embedded in our DNA as we move forward, how are we going to engage? And I just want to pause here for a moment to say that we recognize the moment we're in right now. We understand that communities are at capacity. Communities are hurting right now in terms of some of our social unrest and some of the social issues that we're addressing, as well as the pandemic. We know a lot of capacity is being spent right now on local and national elections. And so it's really our commitment to go as fast as the community is willing to go with us. And we won't go faster than that. And that's really been our commitment as we look at some of our activities for 2020. And Joan Van Holle will talk a little bit more to specifically engagement for this year, but just wanted to share that with you because I think it's really important for us to have that understanding that we're aware and we're learning and we'll be moving as the community is willing to move. So having said that, as Dan's talked about, I mean, this line has been talked about since 1988. There's probably a lot of folks on this line that weren't even here in 1988 or not even in the corridor in 1988. So there's a lot of robust thoughts and feelings about the corridor, and we do want to honor that. We absolutely do want to honor that because I think part of what we also understand with community engagement, communities, neighborhoods, people, residents, businesses are sick of us always asking and not necessarily understanding, right? So that's really on us in terms of a challenge and a responsibility from the project public perspective is really being able to facilitate that and put that together and bring that back out and saying, this is what we've heard, this is what we understand, does this make sense? And we're starting today with our conversation. And being in a pandemic right now, we are challenged to really do that deep-rooted engagement that we need to do. It's not easy. It's not like we can get together and sit face-to-face, but we're going to figure out what's the best ways to do that and figure out what's the best engagement as we move forward, not just for the next year or two, but just throughout this. And I really appreciate Commissioner Fernando's comments about how can that engagement actually make the project better and really be something that's even, 1 + 1 = 3 and really become this amazing project and really set the tone for that and be an example not only in Minnesota, but for the rest of the nation. So part of that, I think, is us being in communities, understanding, listening, and also working to co-create those solutions that really particularly reduce disparities. So as you would see that that's also embedded in and one of our principles. Again, we're taking a comment on this and would love to hear your thoughts about that, but really that needs to be centered in the communities of all races, ethnicities, incomes, opportunities, abilities. So we're actually placed in the center of really hearing and trying to match up what this project can do with the desires of the communities. So we'll be able to work through that with you. That is our hope, and really be able to come out something that is co-created with all of our energies together that really respects the work that has been done, the new ideas that are going to be needed and solutions to the process that we're going to go through, and really inform the decision making as we move forward. If we can move to the next slide, I'll just talk a little bit more of how we have been traditionally structured with this. So the council, Met Council, is doing this in partnership with Hennepin County as lead agencies. So the council does own and operate the transit investment. But we work very heavily, not only with the county clearly, but also with our city partners who have done amazing work in terms of preparing communities to receive this investment and maximize the opportunity. So that we would obviously see that moving forward. There is a advisory body that is set up for each one of our LRT projects, and that is called the Corridor Management Committee. And that is mostly comprised of our city leaders, as well as county leadership, the council, organizations, community organizations, as well as state agencies. So like MN.DOT is represented, because we are talking about infrastructure and we're talking about how that goes. So their voice is also at the table. This is an advisory committee that hasn't really met while we were hoping to get through positive discussions with the railroad. They just recently met in August, and it's our commitment that that group does come together through this transition time to really hear and represent the voices of the community members. We also have a business and a community advisory committee, and I think some of the names, some of the folks that I saw attending today are also part of our committees. We're looking to expand that role as well in both the membership and really some of the perspective and scope of what they do. So these are, again, committees that are populated from community members that are mostly nominated from cities, both on the business and on the community advisory, but then also clearly room for more folks around the table that represent a larger voice or voices that haven't been represented. So I bring this up in the sense of really wanting to work with everybody here of how we can revisit some of that structure and membership and that representation that is on the table. We want to be very transparent about that and making sure that we've got the voices around the table that need to be heard and work towards that. That's a lot. We want to maintain this relationship with you. So I'm hoping that today's the first step. And Anna, you've talked a little bit about how we'll continue to do that. So if we can go to the next slide, our colleague, Joan Van Holla, will talk about how we're planning for that engagement. Thank you.
Hi all, I'm Joan Van Holla. I'm engagement specialist at Hennepin County for those that are newly joining this forum today. And I am so excited to be here. I started my career a long time ago as a coalition organizer, and I worked with West Broadway businesses and West Broadway Coalition to staff the Northside Transportation Network in the early days of the Blue Line extension. So in that theme, I think it is very important that we draw on the long history of community engagement that has already happened within the Blue Line Extension corridor. There was a Bottineau Health Impact Assessment back in 2014. Northside Transportation Network was deeply involved in commenting on the environmental impact statement for the Blue Line extension. That includes a very good environmental justice chapter 7. So if you're a nerd like me, you might want to check that out. Hennepin County had robust engagement during station area plannings for each of the, I believe, 13 stations along the line. And North Minneapolis was deeply involved in all of that. Many of those basic concepts and principles will apply moving into the future. And we, at that time, were happy to work with Nexus Community Partners, who subcontracted with many grassroots groups to ensure that health equity strategies were embedded in the station area plans. And then we moved on at the county with Bottineau Community Works project into advanced planning, where we began to build on those stationary plans with concepts and designs aimed for implementation. So here we are today, moving forward in a new way. It's so exciting to think about new opportunities. Our first phase for the community engagement process is really to co-create our community engagement plan. I'm working on gearing up 2 contracts with community-based organizations as we speak, who will help co-create a community engagement plan that will be community informed. So stay tuned for opportunities to weigh in on your thoughts about what's the best way to engage your community. Who are key stakeholders we should be talking to and looping in once we're moving into 2021. And also there'll be opportunities for more online forums like this, an online survey, really looking at what are the opportunities, what are the current community concerns and issues, and how do communities want to be best engaged. And I'll be leading that process on behalf of Hennepin County and the entire project. We're in deep partnership with Metro Transit, and my partner in that work is Sophia Guinness, and many of you may have met her. She's been very much involved in Southwest LRT line and the Blue Line extension up to Brooklyn Park. So if we can go to the next slide. We actually have a chance to hear from you today. So here's some questions that we have about that we want to hear from you. So what are the best ways to engage West Broadway for the future planning of the Blue Line LRT extension? What are potential challenges? What are potential opportunities for this new direction? And just in general, what questions do you have for us? So I'll turn it back to our moderator, Anna, who will lead us in this part of the program. And thanks so much for having us. We're honored to be here.
Thank you so much, everyone, for that very informative presentation. Super quick before we jump into the questions, I've just been looking at the chat, and I know there's been some questions regarding where, the light rail will go, and some concerns about the potential West Broadway location. So if someone could just talk about where, we are regarding the placement of the light rail line, whether there's been any assessments done to determine the impacts.
And I can maybe take that a little bit and say where we are. So obviously, many of you know that there was a history, as I talked about pre-2014, that looked at a number of alternatives and laid out maps and researched where light rail would go. That eventually led to the locally preferred alternative that utilized the BNSF right away. So that's what was done in the past, and that work still lives, and some of those things are still valid points and concerns, and some of those have changed over the years. So that's a starting point. One of the things that we know primarily is that the line, and again, the principles are what guide us, right? So we know that the line needs to go from Target Field Station up to North Brooklyn Park. We know that at all costs and at all measures, we need to avoid the BNSF railroad right away. So those are really the two primary things that we have in place. Other than that, we are open for going back, taking a look at the past work that was done, looking at the world as it is today, and then engaging with community to help decide where this makes the most sense. Now, that means in some spots this may be easy, and in some spots this may be difficult. So if you think about the area in the city of Crystal, up north of Highway 100, well, there, the LRT was going to run in the BNSF right away, and right next to it, right parallel to that, is Highway 81, a county roadway. Okay? That seems like that would be a good spot for it to go. But that's not the same thing where BNSF right away runs from Highway 55, where it essentially goes through neighborhoods, through Robbinsdale and Golden Valley, residential neighborhoods, and Theodore Wirth Park. So there isn't a parallel roadway right there. So where does it make sense? Where should it go? That's what we'll want to engage with people on over the next 6 months, 8 months, to help really kind of bring that into focus.
Awesome, awesome. So that is really good to know. So everyone, the location, where it's going to go, just to reiterate, in North Minneapolis is very much going to be based on community engagement. And so that's just something to be very clear about, because I know that there's been discussions of potential routes, and that is something where community engagement is definitely going to happen first before there are any, decisions made about that. And so going off of that, I know I've gotten some questions in the chat, so I'm just gonna kind of go with those. And so one of them is regarding, Carrie Jo Felder talked about the segregation that happened with University of Minnesota, one going through University of Minnesota's campus. And so, you know, and I know that you will be looking for community input on this, but what are some ideas for how businesses can be supported, you know, during and then also after construction to make sure that there isn't that displacement?
Well, let me start, and I'm sure Sam can join in as well. I mean, that's where really we'll have to analyze the several differences of the ways that businesses and properties can be impacted. One of them will be ways that businesses might be impacted because LRT is constructed, and then the other is the impact during construction. So we have to kind of make sure that those are separated and that we understand what are ways that we can support businesses and help them get through the construction itself, right? So that has a lot to do with things like temporary parking and access and loss of traffic potentially in front during construction and just general construction impacts. So we'll have to develop strategies around that. But then we'll also have to work with the community and work and develop ways that we make sure that we're building this not in order to change the neighborhood, but to serve the businesses that are there. So we want the end result to be that a project gets built wherever it might get built, and that it's being built not only to serve people that will use it, but to serve the businesses, residents, schools, community organizations that are there. And so there were a number of things that worked on the University Avenue project. There were some that didn't. We'll use some of those lessons learned, talk to other people around the country. A lot of light rail projects that have been built in areas around the US, and a lot of good things that went into those. We'll have to work with community to develop the best ones. Sam?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. The piece that I'd like to add to that, as we're in construction for Southwest LRT, and as Dan has talked a little bit about Central Corridor, the Green Line on University, there are definitely challenges. I mean, we are not interested in putting anybody out of business. That doesn't serve our region well. And part of what we do then is that engagement that happens prior to construction. Understanding, how do your employees get to work? What's your delivery schedule? Where, you know, what are the routes that you take? All of that. So a lot of that planning is sort of baked into some of the construction that we do. And then there's continued ongoing negotiations actually with some of the property owners. Sometimes we need to use their parking lot if they have a parking lot, and that we negotiate that. So that is something that is very robust during construction. I would say, as we are in this phase right now, is really, it's important for us to hear what are the challenges that businesses are facing right now. So as we move forward, we have that understanding kind of baked in to our planning program. We want this to be continue to be a destination for folks, and that businesses are able to take advantage of that, and their employees are able to get to work easier, all of that. So I think part of that work is on the front end of being able to sit down and really understand, how can we be helpful? How can we understand? How can we communicate to larger audiences of your desires as well as the challenges you're facing too, and bring that into the conversation.
Awesome, thank you.
And
If I could jump in
just
here.
wanted to add, oh, sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
Oh, you got it, Joan.
I just wanted to add that this is the time to elevate these issues. Preventing gentrification and displacement is a regular conversation here in Hennepin and in Metro Transit. I think to prevent gentrification and build wealth for our local communities, it requires an all hands on deck approach. It's not just going to be the county, it's going to be the city, Metro Transit. We need community to elevate successful strategies and put forward specific proposals. We need philanthropy at the table. I think we have the skills and knowledge right at our hands to address this, and we really need to be in good, lasting conversations to make it work.
Yeah, and so what I'd add is, and now is a time for us. So my job is, of course, as a policymaker, and then I'm also supposed to be the front door to constituents. And so, as someone who serves the constituents of the North Side, now is the time to be as respectfully and as demanding as possible. Now, like this project will come with infrastructural investment, economic investment that we couldn't stitch together over several terms even. Like there's just so much investment. And so when we, for example, with construction, if we push for participation rates that we've never seen before, right? Like that creates jobs for folks that are local, that envision something that we not have only deserved, but that I believe we've earned. And so I think people will say, like, we deserve this. I'm like, we've earned this. It is incredible how many people live over north and how there are very few, if any, places to eat for dinner. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And so I am hopeful, and I believe that we have earned a certain kind of feedback over the years. And through this project, through dialogue now, through further feedback, I hope that we can work to begin to correct some of the harm that policies have inflicted upon this community. And so that's my individual belief. Systems are not broken. Our systems do not work for all of us because they were never designed for all of us. And so we're not fighting against neutrality here. We need to advocate for ourselves and for the generations after, because we deserve places to eat, work, sleep, purchase services, purchase retail. We need places where we can be employed and have our dollars stay local. And that's just not as true on the north side as it is other parts of Minneapolis. And so that's why this is truly among the top priorities for my office moving forward. It is multiple parts. Yes, it is the connectivity of a regional transit system, of course, and it is also the way in which we do it, so that we are investing as directly as possible. And there's been a lot of learnings over the last a few decades. There's been other places nationally that have put gentrification prevention or anti-displacement measures directly into how they're doing work. And we want to receive that feedback from you so that we can really construct something both in concept as well as in values that is meant to serve all of us.
Thank you so much for those comments. That's very true about the whole all hands on deck approach. And I'm seeing just in the comments here, I'm just kind of combining many people's questions right now, because a lot of people have the same questions regarding that. Regarding an all hands on deck approach to really, mitigate or just stop gentrification from happening with the pandemic and, the recent uprising and funding being really tight in light of all of that. The first question is there the funding to do the necessary work? And then the second part of the question is, there's been a lot of comments that, gentrification, it starts, with the announcement of the line, not just afterwards and not just during construction. And so how will, there be financing mechanisms to help, business owners, for example, purchase their buildings, to help homeowners purchase their homes, in response to this happening, just to make sure that people, are not displaced? Has that been something that has been discussed? I know Commissioner Fernando, you mentioned something at the county level with purchasing of buildings. If you can talk a bit on that regarding funding.
Yeah, so what I was referencing for those that came on the call later, the county will soon be voting on an action partnering with LISC and many other partner organizations to secure parcels on Lake Street and Broadway that were impacted by the unrest and uprising. The intention is to keep the parcels in the community. And since such activity is oftentimes opportunity for investors, we believe that there's a role we can play in keeping that property locally owned. And so that's not yet complete, but that is the intention. That's an example of policies that will work adjacent to this Blue Line project. I have a lot of ideas around this, particularly, I mean, I probably shouldn't get too far ahead of myself, but I mean, transit-oriented development, for example, was a fund created by the county at some point to invest in places where there's transit. Like, there are other ways in which we can support economic activity prior or adjacent to a project. I don't know much about the city's process with the cultural corridors, but that's an example, right? Like, so this is back to the all hands on deck piece. It's not all gonna reside within the Blue Line project. And so even if the answer isn't yes within this project, our job is to help find which governing body can say the yes and in what manner so that we can achieve the outcome that we're discussing here.
Yeah, I think Hannah, I mean, Juhi put a comment in the chat, and I know Juhi did some work on Central Corridor as well. And so while I'm really familiar with the project stuff that went on Central Corridor, there were many different partners that came to the table between the city and various philanthropy groups and various economic development folks that helped with business loans and business partnerships, and we can get creative and go back and look at what worked there, and we can look around the country and find out what worked. Seattle has done some wild things out there with some of their street running lines and how they've helped folks and supported businesses along there. This is not an uncommon thing because, like here around the country, the desire is also to build transit where people need transit, and so going through an area like the North Side and through Robbinsdale and Crystal and Brooklyn Park, there's a reason why this corridor reaches a level of needing of being a good candidate, and that's because it's through an area where it will serve people that will use transit to get to jobs, to get to schools, to get home, to do that. And so we'll look for ways that we can use various mechanisms to help with all of that.
Awesome, great. Well, those are all really good points. And that's something where, you know, during the updates, having updates from, you know, all, you know, a variety of players with how gentrification is going to, you know, really be stopped in its tracks, so to speak. I think that'll be really, really important. And yeah, we definitely will have follow-ups about that because it's not just a county project, not just a Metro Transit project. It's really, everyone needs to be involved to, you know, help these businesses stay within the community. So I know that it is 1 o'clock. So first of all, thank you so much, presenters. It was wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. And then just really quick, just a little preview of next month's luncheon. And so, as you know, we have these lunches every third Thursday from 12 to 1, and they are via Zoom now because of the pandemic. And so the next luncheon is October 15th, and it's on wealth building and business succession planning. So, you know, how are you going to keep that money going, future generations within your community? How do you make sure to transfer, you know, ownership to maybe your employees? Kind of different ways to do that. Really build a plan around that. So that will be next month, and we will get these resources to everyone last week of September, as well as the video, which is available on N.E.O.N and WPC's websites and social media. So did I miss anything, Felicia?
The one other thing I would say is if you happen to have joined because someone, maybe me, sent you a direct link to the Zoom and you didn't register through Eventbrite, if you'd like to be added to the newsletter, know whenever we're having these, who's going to be here, and any of the other extra stuff that'll be coming in next month, drop your email in our chat. We'll grab that and make sure that you get the follow-up video, the follow-up resource information, and all of that too. So I'll be on for a couple minutes for folks who need to drop that in the chat. I do want to thank all of our panelists. This has been really great, very informative for me, inspiring in some ways, just hearing you all's willingness to like really partner, revisit what the engagement looks like going forward, and really allow us all to be working on this together. So it's not, Irene, something that's going through, but it's, you know, coming to us, you know, it's for us. So yeah, stay connected, everybody. Follow West Broadway and N.E.O.N. WBC is still hiring. I am looking for a fund development manager. Okay, we got a head start. Come work with me. That's all I got, y'all.
Oh, and then quick plug. So talking about shopping local. So this year, Black Friday on Broadway. We're really excited. We're going to have a lovely location. It's not going to be at N.E.O.N, but it's going to be on the corridor, and it's going to be awesome. A bigger location to maintain social distancing. And the applications for that is due tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. And as part of this year's Black Friday on Broadway, we're having marketing training beforehand. So they're going to be cohort models. So you're going to be working with vendors that are similar to you via Zoom, and with two really great marketing experts, one for website development and content creation, and the other for social media campaigns. So really like getting going so that you know your business. So we're super excited about that, and we're going to be promoting those businesses during the holiday season. So
we're going to invite everybody here to shop and just buy y'all out. So please apply to be a vendor. We have great things in store for you to make sure that you're successful. So yeah.
awesome.
Thanks, Carla, for dropping that link in the chat. All right. Well, thanks, y'all. Is there any food left at N.E.O.N, Anna?
Yep, there is. I'll be here until like 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock. Yes, 2 o'clock.
All right. So if you're nearby, stop by N.E.O.N for some food.
Thank you.
Peace, y'all. Thanks, Kamish.
Plant-based. Oh. Okay, bye.